Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Careers in Publishing event. My name is Alice, and I'm the Training and Digital Marketing Manager at Publishing Scotland. So Publishing Scotland is the trade network and development body for the book publishing sector in Scotland. We represent over 100 publisher and network members, and we act as the voice and network for the publishing industry, helping companies and individuals develop and promote their work. And we are delighted to be hosting this event today in collaboration with bookcarriers.com, which is a service established by Suzanne Collier back in 1999 with a mission to make entry into the industry accessible for all, as well as to support people who are working with books and are looking to advance. So just a couple of quick housekeeping things before I hand over to Suzanne. If you could keep your microphones muted throughout this session, that would be really helpful. You are all very welcome to keep your cameras on. It's always nice to see some faces. And you're going to be able to ask questions later in the session, and you can do that by either raising your hand using the raise your hand feature, or if you'd like to speak, or if you prefer, you can also use the chat box and type your question in there. So without further ado, I am handing over to our chair today, Suzanne, who is an award-winning careers advisor for the publishing industry, as well as the founder of bookcarriers.com.
Thank you so much, Alice, and thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. Now, we have got a great panel for you. We have Isobel Birks, a Senior Assistant Editor at Edinburgh University Press. We have Olivia-Savannah Roach, the Campaigns Assistant at Canongate Books, and Richard Wainman, the Senior Designer for Floris Books. Now, as Alice just said, what we're going to do is we're all going to have a few minutes talking about ourselves and our career so far, and then we're going to open the room for questions. So if you've got any questions, put them in the chat or use the raise your hand feature and we will come back to you. So first of all, let me just tell you a little bit about me and my career path so far. I started working in book publishing straight from the local comprehensive school at the age of 16, I know, and I'm celebrating 40 years in publishing this year. Anti-Wrinkle Cream is doing very well, thank you. I have worked in every department, and I've worked in both academic and trade, but the majority of my time has been spent in sales and marketing, and particularly in new business development. I set up bookcarriers.com back in 1999, and through bookcarriers.com we have evolved. It's now my sole occupation, although I occasionally do some consultancy for publishers, and we are repositioning ourselves as the independent careers service for the whole of the UK book publishing. We have a number of events, so we have weekly careers podcast, and you should subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just find us across all social media at Book Careers, as we have loads and loads of content if you're job hunting, looking at publishing as a career, or if you're in publishing already and wondering what's next. Right, you didn't come here to listen just to me, so I'd like to introduce you to Isobel Birks, the Senior Assistant Editor of Edinburgh University Press. Hello, Isobel. Welcome.
Hi there, can you all hear me okay? My Wi-Fi's been a bit temperamental. Can you hear me okay, Suzanne?
Yeah.
Excellent. So I'm Isobel Birks, and I'm Senior Assistant Editor at Edinburgh University Press. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what my role consists of. So I'm responsible for kind of general list management for classics and ancient history and Islamic and Middle Eastern studies. I previously worked on Scottish studies for a little bit, but I've kind of become more specialised into classics and ancient history and Islamic studies. So I kind of provide general support to the commissioning team and act as a first point of contact for our authors, editors, contributors, kind of from contract stage all the way to production, guiding them through the various stages of the publication process. So in that, I kind of organised the proposal peer review process, which is kind of crucial to academic publishing, which entails contacting readers, requesting reports on proposed projects and sending out those materials, and ensuring deadlines are adhered to, which is crucial for our academics, authors and commissioning editors. The books will then be accepted by our publishing committee, and I will then draft up the contracts and kind of ensure that these are signed in a timely manner, updating our title management system and welcoming authors to Edinburgh University Press. And in that, a big part of my job is managing the entire publication schedule for my lists. I create this every year by pulling data from our title management system. I check the progress of manuscripts, assist authors with any queries they might have regarding copyright, illustrations, and then I oversee the delivery of these manuscripts, organising manuscript reviews if these are required, and just keeping everyone up to date throughout this process and ensuring our schedules are adhered to. I will then prepare the manuscripts for production, organising cover images, back cover copy, and ensuring kind of the author's submission is to a high standard for our production team, and then I will hand it over to our production team. And once that book is in production, I will work to secure endorsements for the book by reaching out to academics and kind of complete any other kind of general editorial admin that's kind of involved with that. And kind of outside of my day job, I'm also part of some project teams at Edinburgh University Press. So I'm on the Core Values Committee and the Redux Conference Committee, which we are planning an international academic conference, which will be held in Edinburgh in May next year. And it's all very exciting. And we're organising speakers and themes, and it's going really well. And finally, I'm also part of our title management project team because we are currently undergoing a complete review of our title management system and getting a new one in. So it's all very exciting. So I'm working on that team at the minute to help with the kind of data migration.
Thank you, Isobel. Are you able to tell us a bit how you found your first job in publishing and how you moved up to where you are now, please?
Yep, so I did a classic degree, really. I did English Lit and History at Glasgow University, 2014 to 2018. It wasn't until my final year there when we had a career session on publishing that I thought it would be an option. It was a career session through Penguin, I think, and I thought that sounded really interesting. My initial dream was to kind of get into children's marketing and editorial, so kind of taken a detour from that, but it's worked out quite well, I think. So after graduating, I kind of attended industry-led events by Penguin and getting into publishing, signed up to SYP, and kind of got customer-facing and admin-focused jobs to kind of build my CV and my skills. I volunteered with local book charities and theatres back in Liverpool, and to develop skills specifically in marketing and editorial. And then I was lucky enough to do the work experience that is run by Penguin Random House. So I got a session in publicity, and then I was asked to come back for a temporary job in the children's department in editorial. They were both great experiences, but it just wasn't feasible for me to kind of move to London. So I moved back to Scotland and got a job in corporate sales, which is a bit random, but it taught me a great deal and provided kind of excellent transferable skills for where I am now, especially with the view to develop into kind of a commissioning editor. I learned about sales, organisation, time management. So yeah, it was a great experience, but it was during the pandemic and I decided, you know, I really do want to pursue publishing, but I do want to stay in Scotland. That was kind of key. So I decided to do the publishing masters at Napier to build contacts and a network in Scotland. And it was a great experience. I got really good internships, one being at Floris Books in marketing, which was fantastic. At Jasami Publishing and editorial, and I also completed some freelance work on the side as well. Also whilst kind of working a bit at Waterstones. So that entire experience was great, and I think it really assisted me in getting the job that I have now, which I applied for as I was finishing my masters. It was a maternity cover contract. Found it through Twitter, and I never thought I'd pursue a career in academic publishing because it was my dream to work in children's, but I've kind of realised that it actually suits me really well. So I got this job, completed it alongside my dissertation, and got made permanent and then promoted over the summer. So it worked out quite well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Isobel. And that's a very non-linear career path as well, from going into the industry to outside the industry to doing a master's to getting back into the industry.
Yeah.
Now, if I could ask Olivia-Savannah Roach, please, campaigns assistant at Canongate, to tell us a bit about herself.
So hi, I'm campaigns assistant at Canongate, which means I work across publicity and marketing at the moment. And I'm going to start with telling you how I got into my job, because even though this is my first job in publishing, the journey started quite a while ago when I was a teenager, 10 years old, like 11 years old. And I started a book blog because I wanted to talk about books online. And that's what I saw lots of people doing. And over the span of those years, I basically just went where people were. So when BookTube became a thing, I moved on to YouTube. And then when Twitter became a thing and Instagram became more of a thing, I joined those, and I was always talking in the book circles. And so that means more recently when TikTok and Threads came along, I also joined those as well. So most of the time as I was like growing up, I was making connections and friends online with people who were reading books and talking about books. And eventually I started to receive books from publishers for review. And so when I was at university, also doing English literature and creative writing, I was thinking about what I wanted to do, and I wanted to work with books. And then I wanted to find out if there was a job where I could be the one sending books to influencers. So that's kind of what started me on the path of looking into publishing. So then in my final year of uni, I was like trawling the websites. It was also pandemic year, my final year of uni, which meant there were no internships and nothing going that I could do like that. I was also not in the UK, I was in the Netherlands. So it was very difficult for me to kind of find a way into the industry. When I stumbled upon Creative Access, which is a website that lists a lot of different jobs for creative sectors. And I found the Penguin mentorship, which was entirely online that year because of it being the pandemic. I don't know if it's still online or not. And I managed to get a mentorship with Chloe Healy at Vintage, who is the marketing director. And that was really helpful for me to better understand what marketing was really about and kind of breaking down what that job could entail. And after that mentorship, I started properly job hunting and properly interviewing and ended up getting a job with Canongate Books. But I was not a campaigns assistant to start with. I was a sales and campaigns assistant. So I was working in sales, publicity, and marketing, which is quite a few departments. But I think with indie publishers, there do tend to be those merging jobs, and they can be really good if you're not quite sure which job you want within marketing. So that really helped me quickly understand I was rubbish at sales and that I shouldn't be doing sales, and that I would really like to do something with marketing. And so over time there, I talked to them about what I was interested in and kind of demonstrated my skills in the influencer, TikTok, Instagram space, and honed my marketing skills to kind of move my job title into campaigns assistant. So as campaigns assistant, what my job kind of includes right now is running my own marketing campaigns for titles. Canongate does non-fiction and fiction both, so campaigns for that. But I also very heavily am connected to the influencer side of what we do. I run our Instagram read-alongs. I launched and I run my TikTok with a colleague, and I handle all the communication with bloggers and reviewers. And we launched our first Instagram influencer social in person this year, which was what I was in charge of doing. So it's mostly that kind of thing with a tiny bit of publicity admin as well, but I'm segueing more into the marketing side of things.
Thank you so much, Olivia-Savannah. That's also interesting to see another non-linear career progression as well. And for you to start from such an early age, I think is so commendable. It goes back to some of the things I always say about working in book publishing is a vocation, and it clearly was for you. Now I'd like to introduce Richard Wainman, who's a senior designer at Floris Books. Richard.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yes, my name's Richard Wainman, and I am senior designer at Floris Books. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and my career path so far. First, a wee bit of background to Floris. We are an independent publisher based in Edinburgh. We've been around for coming up to 50 years now. We publish two main strands of books. So under Floris Books, we publish adult non-fiction, including craft books and philosophy, plus children's fiction in translation. Under our Kelpies imprint, we publish Scottish books for children of all ages. So board books for the very young up to middle grade and young teen fiction. We also do picture books, illustrated treasuries of folk and fairy tales, and things like sticker and activity books. So as senior designer, I primarily work on our most densely illustrated titles. I'm part of a team of 4 in the design and production department, which also comprises an art and production director, a junior designer, and a production controller. I work on various stages of putting a book together from a visual perspective. That's creating cover concepts, typesetting, writing briefs, picture research. I also source and manage illustrators, brief them, and communicate feedback from the rest of the team, the designer being the contact point for an illustrator in the same way an editor is for an author. I work closely with our production controller on the physical attributes of our books, so things like special effects on covers, foil and spot varnish, and sourcing of dummy books to check that we're happy with paper stock, weight, finish, and also to ensure that the books fit for purpose. So you don't want a craft book that won't lay flat when you're trying to follow instructions. I've also done paper mechanics for board books with moving parts, which can be quite challenging to get your head around at first, but it is very rewarding when it works and it all comes together. I worked on one about Stone Age Orkney, and I came up with paper mechanics so you can land a fish or raise a standing stone or excavate an archaeological site, which is a pretty fun thing to get to do during your working day. I also see books through to the final stage with preparing print-ready files. As a designer, you're always working on multiple titles at the same time. Some will be more advanced than others. So on a typical day, I might be writing an illustration brief, giving feedback on some rough artwork, color correcting some final art, preparing files to print, or checking printer proofs. In terms of getting into the industry, I also came to it in a slightly roundabout way. So I studied fine art to degree level, but didn't really know what I wanted to do. I'd always had an interest in books from when I was little, but hadn't necessarily considered it as a career path. I chose fine art partly because it kept my options open rather than having to specialise in one specific discipline. During my degree, I ended up designing all of the posters and catalogues for my cohort's exhibitions and discovered that I had an aptitude for it. After graduation, I found myself in that not uncommon place of not being sure what to do next, and I ended up doing a short internship for a children's academic publisher where my task was to take an American textbook and anglicise it. And while I was working on it, I thought, I'm going to really impress them here, and I redrew one illustration to make it more suitable for a UK audience. That led to 3 years of working as an illustrator and designer on their other titles. I was freelance at that point, doing this alongside other jobs, and while it was okay, they weren't exactly the sort of books I've dreamt of working on. I'd always had an interest in children's books, and you might be able to spot Tintin and Captain Haddock just behind me. So when I found the Floris job on Creative Scotland's website, I knew that that was for me, and thanks to the work with the academic publisher, I built up a good body of material for my portfolio, which I could take along to interview. I started at Floris as a designer and progressed to senior designer as my duties expanded. I'm now working on a greater number of more challenging books. That's either higher profile, more complicated projects, or longer term ones, while supporting the art and production director. I'm involved in acquisitions discussions, which is where we look at foreign language books we could potentially publish, and I also mentor junior staff. One of the things that I get asked as a designer with regard to careers in publishing is whether you need to have studied design, and the answer to that is no, and I am proof of that. If it's design you're interested in, then your portfolio is always the thing that a prospective publisher would look at, which nowadays is going to be online, either as a dedicated website or social media like Instagram. But studying to a degree level or beyond in a creative subject obviously does no harm in terms of things like honing your skills, demonstrating strong work ethic, building a portfolio, that sort of thing. I found that the role of a designer in publishing is sometimes a little bit unclear for people outside of the industry. It's not always immediately obvious what role a designer plays in, say, making a picture book. You know, I've spoken to people not in publishing, and they'll say, does the author not just write it and the illustrator draw the pictures? And it very rarely works like that in my experience. A design is an integral part of any publisher, and as a career, it's one that I've certainly found really rewarding. And I still get a thrill whenever I see one of the books that I've worked on in Waterstones. Other booksellers, obviously, are available.
Thank you, Richard. That's really interesting. And I love how you describe some of the papercraft you've done, because I think sometimes when people talk about designers and you put books together, that part of being a designer is understanding how the paper behaves if you want a pop out or you want the book to do something very different. Now, let's open the room to questions. If you've got a question, please raise your hand using the raise your hand button in Zoom, or put a question in the chat. And we're happy for you to ask us almost anything, really. Okay, I can't see any hands up so far. So I'd like to ask all of our panelists, what is the best bit of your job? Which bit of your job do you enjoy doing the most? Isobel.
I think it's definitely kind of anything that's involving direct contact with authors and academics and our network at EUP. So that's mostly going to academic conferences and meeting people face to face, or having author meetings, book events and launches. And our press committee is a huge part of what we do, and kind of approves our books and makes sure that they're academically like valid. So we have those meetings kind of every month, and they're so important to share ideas, see what's working in the industry at the minute. So that's definitely my favorite part of the job, is that direct author/academic contact.
Olivia-Savannah.
I would say mine's also direct contact, but with the influencers that I work with. The influencer social was just really nice because some influencers had read some of the books and got to meet those authors, and seeing like their happiness and their enjoyment of to have those interactions, or when they like review a book, they found a new favorite, which is ours. I always like enjoyed getting to see that.
And Richard.
Is it bad if I say direct contact too? I love working with illustrators. It's such a collaborative thing, and sometimes feedback can be difficult when there's things that need reworking. But when you're working collaboratively, you're working on the same thing and you're both trying to solve the same problem. And it's moments like when the feedback lands and the illustrator is excitedly saying like, yes, that's it, that works. And you're getting to the solution together. I really, really enjoy that. I also just love seeing the books at the end, like when that box arrives in the office, you open it and you see it for the first time. That's really cool. That novelty is still not worn off.
Lovely. Now we've got some questions coming into the chat, and I can see the first couple really are things that perhaps I should just go ahead and answer. One is, what is the minimum qualification requirement for someone to be eligible to apply for jobs in book publishing? You'll find now that there are a number of schemes and internships and work experience opportunities that do not require a degree. These are still few and far between, but they do give somebody who does not have a formal level of education a great opportunity. So I would say that there isn't a degree requirement in book publishing as such. So it's about you finding your own path. And the second question actually almost leads on to that, because it's, as a student still at university, what are some great ways to gain experience without being directly within the industry to make yourself stand out in internship applications. Now, I always believe it's office experience, and this is one thing that can always make up for the gaps in your academic experience, is to have as much office experience as possible, because most, and some people might not agree with me, but most entry-level jobs in book publishing are office jobs with a bit of creativity thrown in, and it's the office and admin skills that will often carry you through into a more creative role. Do any of our panelists want to add to anything that I've just said?
I think if you are looking to go into marketing and publicity, I think starting an Instagram page talking about books, you don't have to put your face into it if you don't want to, just photos of books shows that you're like motivated and independently want to really participate in that world, and just have consistency with it. And you can really put in interviews or like on your CV the organization skills that it takes to run a page alongside studies or alongside whatever else you're doing.
Yeah, and I think in terms of, I think office skills are so important. It's such an admin focused role. As an assistant, you need to be able to kind of deal with that and evidence that you can deal with that. But I think also if you're trying to get more creative experience, what I did was to volunteer for things maybe that are creative but are kind of outside of publishing. So I volunteered at a theatre and like charities as well, just to kind of get that creative experience as well. So kind of sidestep in to publishing.
For design, I would say it's about portfolio. It's build up a portfolio of material. So demonstrate range, demonstrate the work that you want to make. If you've got illustration skills, that often comes in handy working on design for children's books, picture books. You could design covers for books that you love. It's really about building up a body of work that you can take to a publisher and say, this is the sort of thing that I can do, this is the sort of thing I'm interested in, and that goes a long way towards it, certainly from the design side.
Thank you. Can I just come back on a couple of things that was mentioned? Isobel said about volunteering. There is a huge difference between volunteering for a charity and working for free. We do not endorse working for free just to get publishing experience. I always have this phrase that Book Careers pays everybody. It's Book Careers is me. I have a part-time assistant. We pay everybody that does work for us. Penguin Random House pays everybody that does work experience for us. If we can afford to pay and Penguin Random House can afford to pay, then every organisation and company within publishing should be paying you for any work you're doing within publishing. And Olivia-Savannah is quite right, is that if it's marketing that you want to do, you need to be in those marketing platforms. I sometimes advise, though, if you haven't got the confidence initially to set up your own Instagram or your own social media presence, this is where volunteering for another organisation could give you some of the experience without some of the pressure. Don't feel pressured that this is something that you have to put yourself out there when you're in such a position of what I call naivety, where you're still learning. You want to go somewhere where perhaps you're being mentored into what you're putting out there into the universe. Thank you. Let's see what we've got. The next question is, thank you for all your time today. My question will be, what is your top advice for young people taking their first steps, trying to find a job in publishing, apart from in the publishing industry, apart from internships and mentorships? I think we've answered a lot of that already, but do any of you have anything you want to add to that?
Do you want to go ahead, Isobel?
There you go, Olivia, it's okay.
You can go, Olivia-Savannah, please do.
I just wanted to share the best interview advice that I received, which is, even if you feel like you have no experience that's book specific, you always have experience. And this person was someone who works in a like hiring position. And she said the best interview that she ever had was when someone was talking about their organization skills and their time management skills. And they were saying how they plan holidays for big groups of their friends, which might seem very far off from publishing, but she just went to the ins and outs of how she does that, manages different people's schedules and times and all the booking, and it was perfect for a publicity job because that's what you end up doing. So I would just stress that just be creative in the ways that you think and talk about your skills in interviews.
Yeah, that was my
Most
point.
definitely.
I think just advocating for the skills you already have and not being ashamed that they're not in publishing, because there's so many transferable skills that you'll learn from day-to-day jobs or part-time jobs, or just activities like planning trips for your friends. I think just advocating for yourself, the skills that you have.
Exactly. There's so much, and this is why I always endorse office experience, because there's so many things you can learn in an office. And this brings us on to our next question is, what advice would you give to applicants struggling to break into the industry? I'd like to just kick off with that. And if there's one thing that you take away from today, or anything I've ever say, or I always say this phrase, is the best thing you can do to help improve your applications is to learn how to read and understand instructions. I still talk to so many recruiters, that's people recruiting within the publishing, for publishers, and the recruitment consultants, who just say, why didn't the candidate read the job advertisement? And so it sounds like really basic, and sometimes it can sound really patronizing, just read and understand instructions. But so often, if you tailor your application to the job advertisement and you've researched the publisher, that will really help improve your applications, because 80% of people who apply for publishing jobs don't spend the time reading the advertisement or tailoring their application. Anybody else?
I would agree with that, and also add to that is, and it's easy to say it, but it's sometimes a case of knowing what it is that you want to do, or knowing what area you want to work in, because you can of course have transferable skills across different areas, but if you're not clear about what it is that you want to do or which area you want to go in, and you maybe approach them all like they're all much of a muchness, it's a lot harder to know where you will best fit, where you will thrive, if you yourself aren't totally clear in that application. This is why I want to do this. These are the skills that I bring to it.
Thank you, Richard. The next question is, what advice would you give former educators who are interested in transitioning to the publishing and or editing industries? Does Isobel, do you want to start by answering that one?
Yeah, I think the skills, like I said before, the skills that you'll have as an educator will transfer really well specifically to academic publishing. So I think that would be an area that I would focus on sending applications to and seeing how you get on there. What I did also, and I trialed it, I tried freelance work to develop editing skills, and it is challenging, and it is difficult when you don't have that network of people that would like to use your freelance work. I would really recommend having a look into that and seeing if you could do that, because I think the skills that you have as an educator would transfer really well to that, and it could be a good stepping stone to see if it would work for you. So a lot of academic publishers are always looking for kind of copywriters, typesetters, because as an editor myself, I don't specifically do that editorial work, that sits in our production. So I would recommend looking into that.
Thank you, Isobel. The other thing I would say is if you're looking towards freelance work, you should look to the CIEP, the Chartered Institute of Editors and Proofreaders, who have their membership organisation, they have excellent training, and because they're now Chartered Institute, that training is qualified and it brings you at a certain level. And very often publishers will look at employing freelancers who are CIEP trained and qualified. The other thing Richard mentioned about knowing what you want to do. Now, at Book Careers, we have a free careers clinic. It runs all year round, where you can have a 15-minute one-to-one chat with me, and we can discuss some of the issues that you're having perhaps, or what you're debating within yourself. But what I would also recommend, what I reached back to get, was a copy of this book. It's called Inside Book Publishing. It's by Giles Clarke and Angus Phillips, and it's used as a textbook in most of the Masters in Publishing courses, and it really is an absolutely comprehensive book about how book publishing works and how the books come together. It is quite expensive. You might want to borrow it from your local library, but there's things in it. I've work with editorial directors, managing directors, all people at all levels. And recently I had to refer a senior editorial director to read a chapter in this book before they went to a job interview. So I advise you, this is like a Bible for anybody that works within the industry. And to book into the Careers Clinic, if you go to the Book Careers website, there's a button that says book a call. And if you're in the UK, it's free, and it's every week, 5 weeks out of 6. So let's move on. What are the expectations of the book publishers today in terms, we've just answered that, in terms of those just starting out, is a degree in publishing necessary? We've answered that. And it's the same with the masters. A master's in publishing is not necessary. Is it necessary to have a relevant degree in the role you're applying to within the publishing industry? I think Richard partly answered that earlier, in that you don't need a design degree to go into book design, and you don't need a degree in the field that you're going in either. The only time I've actually seen it matter is perhaps if you're in journal publishing and you're working on a scientific journal, and they want the senior editor or the publisher of that journal to have a degree in that discipline, or very, very close. But I still know lots of people in journal publishing working on journals that they have no qualification or interest in. So I would say it's far more flexible. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add to that. No? Okay. What advice do you have for progressing your career within Scotland? There are some really interesting publishing roles available, but 95% are based in London. Now, there is a very long answer to this question on this week's Book Careers podcast, which you can find on iTunes, Spotify, and on the Book Careers website. It is to time with Scottish Careers Week and this event. Someone asked me lots of questions relating to publishing, and particularly Scottish publishing. But I don't want to monopolise. Do any of you want to answer before I add something in? No?
I would just say, just look into where offices are. It's very like manual, having to go by publisher. But for example, for Canongate, the head office is in Edinburgh, and half our team are based in Edinburgh. And I think there's some other publishers that have branches in different places, like Oxford, or okay, I'm not going to be able to name any of the other places, but there are publishers with other branches in other places.
Okay, so what I would advise, and to summarise what's on the podcast this week, is that what you need to do is to read the job advertisement and to see what the publisher is saying about where the job is based, whether it's remote working, fully remote working, whether it's a hybrid role that needs you to go into the office 2 or 3 days, or where the location of the office is. So you've got publishers such as Hachette now, who when they advertise a vacancy, they let you know which of their regional offices, because they now have 5 or 6 regional offices, you can work out of. If you know the publisher has a regional office and the job isn't advertised as working out of there, then I would suggest that perhaps that might be an opportunity, unless they definitely say that this has to be in our London office and not Edinburgh. Okay, but there's a much longer answer on the podcast this week. Firstly, I'm someone who's studying a master's after switching from a different kind of career path to creative writing and maybe publishing. Would this make it harder for me to enter the industry? Anybody want to answer that?
Speaking from experience, I don't think it'll make it harder. I think you have an advantage in that because you have so many different skills that you've learned from your other career path. And for me, working in sales, actually, it was an advantage because I could use that experience to have like kind of direct examples in interviews to pull on that perhaps publishers hadn't heard before. And maybe I think it's an advantage and it can make you stand out of this other applicants.
Agreed. And this is the thing when I said, when each of our fantastic panelists were talking about their career paths, about them being non-linear, is that what makes the industry so fantastic is that we all have so many different life experiences that come together. So don't be worried or hesitant because you've chopped and changed, or even if you're career changing into publishing, because this is what makes this industry so strong, because we are so knowledgeable about so many different things. Now, this is a very interesting question. The world is becoming more digital, especially with AI becoming more prevalent. Is this concerning for you as members of the publishing industry? Let's start with the editor. Isobel, let's put you on the spot. Yeah,
we've been discussing this a lot lately, especially with kind of industry-wide conferences happening, and it's the main topic on everybody's lips at these conferences. And it is concerning, but I think it's also kind of exciting in the ways that we can kind of adapt and use it in the business. Obviously, with contracts and copyright and all of these things, we're having to put new measures in place, new contracts, to make sure that we're protecting the author, protecting the copyright. However, it's also interesting to hear kind of academic feedback on it as well, and seeing how they predict it's going to improve business and make us more efficient and open kind of opportunities up, things we couldn't even kind of dream about before. So I think we are concerned we need to get the policies right, but it is still exciting to kind of maybe use it in a good way.
Great, thank you, Isobel. Richard, is AI influencing your job and role in design at all?
It's certainly something that has been discussed, and it's early days, and I suppose it's hard to know where it's ultimately going to go. And there are things labelled as AI that aren't AI. It's also hard when you find that it's starting to be built into programs like Photoshop and the way that Photoshop operates. But then when you think about it and you kind of work backwards, it has been present for quite a long time. It's just that AI is now a thing that everybody is aware of, that previously it was a tool. And I think thinking about it as a tool is helpful. Quite what role it will play, it is difficult to say. I've certainly seen it being written into contracts from an illustration point of view. So, for example, you can't use Illustrator's work to train generative AI. You can't generate work based on existing Illustrator's work, which of course makes absolute sense. And all that is just development of the typical contractual clauses you would find anyway with regard to things like copyright. So yeah, it's almost like crystal ball gazing, but it's recognizing what's out there, recognizing the impact that it has immediately, and just trying to take best steps, but then also trying to approach it with, you know, a reasonably open mind, because it's very easy to fall into the trap of seeing the stuff like, you know, AI is going to kill us all and steal our jobs, but it's using it in a way that it is productive to you, rather than it letting it become the be all and end all. It's something that you can hopefully take use of, but who can say?
Thank you. Olivia-Savannah, have you got any comments about how AI is being used in marketing or in your role at all?
I don't think I can add much more to what Richard said, to be honest. It's a similar boat with designing assets and using Photoshop, which does have AI integrated into it in certain aspects, but I don't really have any insightful light to stand up to the situation. No. It's too early.
Lovely, thank you. What I would say to any job seeker listening today is do not put your CV into AI, and do not use AI to write your CV or a covering letter, because Richard mentioned machine learning. And this is what AI is doing at the moment. And you'll see now when you upload your CV to a number of job sites, it will want you to tick a box that says this is your own work and has not been generated by AI or another person. So I would advise against you putting your CV or covering letter in, because it won't necessarily make it that much better than you could do it yourself. But what it means is that if anybody else is asking AI to write a CV or covering letter, it will use what it's learned from yours and maybe some words and phrases to build somebody else's. And this is one of the difficulties with AI, and why so many publishers have come out and said that they don't want any AI generated books, and they're discouraging their authors from using AI. But thank you, it's such an interesting question. Do you have any advice for people in an early career publishing role who want to make the next step, or anyone who wants to transition from one form of publishing to another, such as from academic or trade? Now, I've got an answer, but I'll let our other panelists speak. You got anything you want to say? No, okay, I'm going to kick off. So what I would say is it's far easier now to move from academic to trade and trade to academic than at any time previously within the industry. And it's the same as if you want to move from editorial to marketing, marketing to editorial or production. And the key is it's that reading and understanding. It's that reading and understanding what the new role looks like, what the differences are between academic and trade, and how you describe your transferable skills. So there's certain phrases used in academic publishing, such as peer review, which Isobel mentioned earlier, which are quite alien to trade publishing. So you might reframe that on your CV and within your covering letter, if that's what you're talking about. So it is about really reframing some of your experience and making sure that your transferable skills come out. But it's far, far easier, and it is really about tailoring your application. Publishers are so more open to people moving across now. So have confidence in your applications. How would you recommend conducting networking? Should you be honest, say you're looking for a job, or just have casual conversations with people in the industry at events? Olivia-Savannah, I'm going to put you on the spot. Tell us a bit about, because you're in a networking role, you've done lots of networking. Tell us what you would recommend.
I usually phrase it as like, I'm interested in working in marketing, or I'm interested in working in publishing. I don't know why I avoid the the words job hunting, but I just say like, I'm interested in this. And then I tend to lead with a question, because people are always, or have always been, very open and engaging and willing to talk about their roles or how they got into publishing. So I just think, be honest with them, say that you're interested in whatever you're interested in, try and find people who have that experience, and just ask as many questions as they're willing to answer. I think that's the best way to do it.
Lovely, thank you, Isobel. So as somebody that works in editorial, you probably get swamped with people at networking events asking you how they can get published or how they can get to do your job. What would you recommend that how do you like to be approached if somebody's actually looking for a job and wants to network with you?
Oh yeah, so when I go to academic conferences, academics will come up to me and kind of ask questions about how could they get their work published, their PhD thesis, or just kind of a full proposed book. I think the best way is to kind of have some general knowledge of maybe who you're speaking to, or so if someone's coming up to me, I would probably like them to have a bit of knowledge of Edinburgh University Press and what we publish, our specialities, and also kind of maybe what lists are kind of at the conference as well, just to see that they've kind of taken an interest in kind of what we do, and then how their kind of research will fit into that and what they can kind of add to our existing kind of lists. But it's all about, yeah, like what Olivia said, asking questions about what you're genuinely interested in, I think, and showing that you want to develop, and letting people know kind of what career that you'd like to have in the very distant future. I think there's no harm in being completely honest and saying what you actually want to get.
Fantastic. And Richard, when you've got people networking with you because they want to be designers, want a job, what would you recommend?
So I think as far as design goes, it perhaps happens less than for other publishing disciplines. Certainly in the case of Floris, because we do most of our design work in-house, so there's not really many opportunities for freelance. For illustrators, we would always say send links to your portfolio, show us the range of what you can do. One thing that's really important is, and I think this is perhaps applicable to other roles as well, is targeting the right publisher. So you find that in some cases, illustrators or other prospective freelancers may take the scattergun approach and just send things out to everybody, and quite often their work is not the best fit for you. But if you've taken the time to do the research and to see the kind of books that the prospective publisher has on their list, and if you can see that the stuff that you're doing is a good fit, that's going to return much more than just sending, CVs or portfolios or whatever out to so many people. In terms of in-person events, I think, as Olivia said, honesty is a huge part. You've not lost anything from being open about the fact that you are looking for a position.
Great, thank you. Now, as regards networking, I would recommend that you join the Society of Young Publishers Scotland branch, because they have lots of different events and have a conference, and there's lots of networking opportunities. I think that's a really, really good place to start as well. Somebody's mentioned for volunteering, I definitely recommend Stanza. I've volunteered with them for the past 2 years. It's such a lovely experience. And while I was just looking at my phone, it's because I was looking for the name of the other Scottish book festival, which my former colleague is now running, and I can't find the name, but if anybody's interested in volunteering for a very small independent Scottish book festival, let me know and I will pass you their details. I just haven't got them with me today. Do you see many disability confident employers in the publishing industry? I would say yes, we do, and I'm sure all our panelists might agree that there are employers their employers are great and not discriminatory of any people with any disabilities. And I think you'll find that publishers are very, very welcome now. And this is one of the great things about remote working and hybrid roles, that makes it much more easier for somebody who might not have, might need some reasonable adjustments within a role because of the health or other disability. Now, we've answered so many questions today and we're really running out of time. So what I want to say is on Thursday at 5 o'clock, there is a session that's just me and you talking FAQs. So I'm going to answer loads more questions on Thursday at 5 o'clock. So do come and join that session. And then at 7 o'clock on Thursday, I'm doing an introduction to book publishing live on YouTube, and you're all welcome to come and join and watch and see me make a complete fool of myself. It just leaves me to ask all our speakers for a final word today. So, Richard, have you got any final words of wisdom for our audience today?
Oh,
Should I come back to you on that?
No. I think if you're interested in getting into a career in design, in publishing, I would really recommend it. I love it. I find it a really rewarding position. I love just being able to work with children's books. It's a fantastic thing. I'd say if you want to find a way into it, build up your portfolio, present the work that you want to be doing. I think that's really important, because there's nothing worse than putting a piece of work in your portfolio that you don't really like, but you thought it was fine, because that's the one that you'll get picked on to do work on. So make sure that you're happy with everything you do, proud of everything that you do. Yeah, and don't worry too much about qualifications. It's certainly from the design side or from an illustration side, it's so much about the work that you produce. The qualifications are important because they help you to build up skills that will be applicable anywhere. But in terms of the work that you produce, that to me is the key thing.
Thank you, Richard. Olivia-Savannah, do you have any words of wisdom you'd like to close with?
I think my final words of wisdom would just be to get on those social platforms if you're looking to go into marketing, and try and follow as many publishers as you can on their socials as well. They often advertise on their own socials when they have a position out, so you can catch it that way as well and see books and know what you need to talk about in interviews.
Thank you. And Isobel?
I think mine would be kind of sticking to your initial goals and gut instinct. Like, I didn't want to move to London, and I stuck with that, and I wanted to stay in Scotland. And I think sticking with that and being kind of persistent with that, and then also I think also advocating for yourself in terms of your existing skills that you have from previous jobs, previous experiences. If you really want to get into publishing, I think it's key. I think a good tip for that is kind of keeping track of your achievements, no matter if they're in a job or just in your day-to-day life, writing them down and kind of applying that to a publishing setting. But yeah, sticking to your guns and kind of always advocating for yourself whilst trying to immerse yourself in the kind of publishing landscape. I think, yeah, that's my advice.
Great, thank you. My final words of wisdom are really, thank you to fantastic panelists. I'm quite happy if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm quite happy for you to do that. And if you want to know what Book Careers are up to, you can follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on loads of social media platforms, subscribe to our YouTube channel. But if you can connect with me on LinkedIn, I'll be publicising the 2 events that are coming up on Thursday. My main advice is to read and understand instructions, don't work for free, and book into the Careers Clinic on the Book Careers website if you want to have a quick one-to-one chat. And it just leaves me to leave with my normal closing, which is, well, thank you so much to our panelists, thanks to our co-hosts, Publishing Scotland, and may you all be doing a job you enjoy and being paid the salary that you so richly deserve. Thank you very much.